Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
All right, morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We're talking behind the scenes. We have Bashir and Diallo Riddle here.
Yep.
We were talking behind the scenes.
Bashir can't get his last name, too?
I definitely can't get his last name.
He's going to try to slide past
I'm not even going to try.
It's one of those American mysteries. It's Salahuddin.
What's that? What is that, African?
It's Arabic.
Arabic, okay.
Salahuddin.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Well, before we get into the behind-the-scenes conversations, Bashir and Diallo, tell them who y'all are.
We're actors, writers, we're executive producers of the new show Southside on Comedy Central. We met in college, we've been friends for years. We helped Jimmy Fallon, launched Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. We actually just did the Tonight Show last night.
Don't be humble. Y'all were writers on Jimmy's show.
We were writers on Jimmy's show.
Yeah.
We did History of Rap and Slow Jam the News.
President Obama.
Yeah, Slow Jam with Obama.
All the good shit, basically.
We definitely were part of the DNA of what. The word today is humility, brothers. We're gonna be humble. I'm gonna tell you why.
Because humble.
I watched the show. I was like, I think I'm gonna be humble. That's my whole. That's gonna be the shtick today. Humility, bro.
I'm gonna get this nice guy thing 6 more months.
That's why I'm rocking the collarless. Pastor from Tampa outfit.
Got the clean shave.
Exactly.
The Southside is Southside Chicago.
Southside of Chicago, and not to get too preachy about it, but that's I was born and raised there. I hate what I see in the news about my hometown. I hate those slices of life. And, I always tell people that what you see on the news about Chicago is a small piece, a very large pie. And our show is going to give you the rest of that pie. The people there are just happy and joyful and loving. We take care of each other. Those at the bottom, those at the top, all different strata, all different classes. It's a lot of love and a lot of joy.
And it doesn't even have to be the South Side of Chicago. Like, you can be from, I'm from Zone 4 in Atlanta, grew up, born and raised. Like, you can be from, Inglewood, Watts, Compton. It doesn't matter.
Really?
There's so many politicians ready to demagogue, so many of these neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, if you grow up in these neighborhoods, you don't wake up in the morning how do I not get shot today? You know what I mean? No, you wake up, you laugh, you love, you live. And that's what we wanted to show on the show.
And there's a rent to own everywhere.
Yeah, man. One of my boys actually used to work at Rent-A-Center. And, Diallo and I wanted to do a show about one of our hometowns. We originally had done some stuff in Atlanta. That didn't work out.
No, let's
we'll save that for later.
Okay, we're going to bring that up in a second.
That's okay. We can bring it all up. But, again, we were like, well, what matters to us is doing something with family and friends. My wife is one of the stars of the show. My older brother is the star of the show.
Everybody on the show is either from the South Side or is still living actively on the South Side.
Some of the actors were taking the CTA to set every day to work on the show.
I see Rel is on there, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
showed us so much love.
Originally from the West Side, and we actually get into that too. We get into the West Side, South Side rivalry a little bit.
What a strange concept! Actually, hire actors from the city.
You when you watch the show, you're not gonna feel like, they got so and so from that show and so from that show. You're gonna watch the show and you're gonna be like, I've never seen any of these people on TV before.
Yeah,
but they all killed it. We cast almost all Chicago actors, and it's the one thing everybody says is the acting on the show is amazing.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that sometimes the funniest person isn't somebody who does it professionally for a living. It's that person back home who's a mechanic.
Yeah.
And we threw those people in. We were shooting a scene on the bus.
That's right.
And we actually let the actual bus driver get in a couple of lines, and he was hilarious.
And then we had to pull the camera from him because he wouldn't stop.
He's
He's doing stand-up. Matter of fact, everybody in the city of Chicago.
Don't go too far.
Literally, everybody we shot around was just like, yo, man, this is great. And, when is it my time? When am I getting on? We were like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I love The Chi, right? I love The Chi on Showtime, but that's because I don't know a lot about Chicago. But when you talk to people from Chicago, you're like, oh, they don't say Joe enough, and they don't do this, and they don't do
we definitely say
Guys,
Joe.
we got 3 Joes per episode.
What do you think about The Chi?
Love Lena, love the show. I'm so happy that we're doing something different. I think it's very important for her to say what she's saying. I think it's also super important for us to say what we're saying. One of the things Diallo and I always joked about, and we had a lot of difficulties. I always tell people failure is your friend because we had a lot of failers in our careers.
And we have a lot of friends, apparently.
And we have a lot of friends. We have a lot of, exactly. So blessed to be here today. But on the positive side, so happy to be here. So blessed.
Very humble.
Shout out God.
Shout out friends.
Shout out friends. But, we always tell people that, we're guys who have been through a lot. And, the opportunity to be able to do a show where we can put on people who we love and like you was just saying, the people who we find the funniest, instead of trying to go out and get different people, we're like, look, let's just do that. And there's so many places to your question. Actually, as you can tell, I forgot your question, but then I just remembered it.
Yeah, as a
but
Chicago
I was playing
native.
it off. I looked at Envy, and he was just like, nah, son, you're on your own. But as a Chicago native, I just think that when I'm home, I'm laughing. I'm having a good time. I'm with family and friends. So there's other places, I think, where you can see the things the challenges that we have to face. I think for our show, one thing Diallo and I always say is that black people have poignant lives already. So sometimes it's nice to come home and not have to watch poignant television and actually be able to just like do other people do and just kick our heels.
So the
and
Chi
have a good time.
it shows too much of the heavy side of Chicago.
I don't think it does that at all. I think she's telling a story that needs to be told. What I'm saying is that we're just in a different.
What I would say to your question is that I think the best thing about what's happening right now in Hollywood is that everybody's getting to tell the story that they want to tell. Like, there are a lot of shows that are telling one side of it. Mm-hmm. I'll even take it a step further. When we were developing our show about my hometown, Atlanta.
Before there was the other Atlanta on FX.
And by the way,
it's true.
I love Donald Glover. He's a friend of ours. Like, I love his version of Atlanta.
He stole your idea, Diallo. Come on.
That's what I want to get across. That's my point.
Is that what happened?
Is that how this show works?
That's exactly how it works.
We don't have beef with anybody. Then you come on the Breakfast Club, and then you got beef.
Childish Gambino stole the show. Diallo just said that.
Headline. Boom.
Clickbait, go.
Actually,
I'm actually making the opposite point.
Yeah.
The point is, I'm actually making the opposite point. You would never hear a white executive at one of these networks say, "Well, gosh, there's already a show about white people trying to find love in Manhattan."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like when we were like, "Hey, we have a show about Atlanta," they were like, "Oh, well, there's already that Donald Glover show." Like they really do believe there can only be one black show about Atlanta. Right. And there can only be one black show about Chicago. No, like the Chi can exist, Southside can exist,
all the stuff,
Atlanta can exist, Insecure can exist, and I should be able to go into any of these networks and be like, I have a show about a black woman trying to find love in Los Angeles, and it is not going to look like Issa Rae's show. You know what I'm saying? Like we can have more than one show.
Absolutely.
About a city.
And I think Donald Glover personally has opened actually doors for us because now when you're in executive meetings and you get pushback, you can be like, yo, they had an invisible car. What the fuck are you talking about right now?
Exactly.
Because it was one of the best episodes on television.
Okay, so here's a real fact. Here's a fact that everybody knows. We were developing a series, and at one point there was a scene in the series.
That's right.
I kid you not, where we were like, so the whole episode is going to be like Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, except instead of on a train, the characters are going to go to a black mall with the purpose of buying a new cell phone, and they're never going to actually accomplish what they went to that mall to do. And a white executive said to us, hey, we want to keep this show very grounded and real. Is there such a thing as a black mall?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And you can't, at that point you're explaining your humor, but at the point you're explaining your humor, it's not funny to anybody
and defending
anymore.
things that you know to be true, which I think, again, is something that...
And by the way, I'm sorry. This executive lives in Los Angeles. I'm like, have you not been to Fox Hills? You know what I'm saying? Like every city's got a black mall, and Atlanta is Greenbrier.
Yep,
Chicago.
They probably look down on you.
Plaza.
Like, of course I haven't been to Fox Hills. Of course I haven't been to Fox Hills.
Well, he probably has now. It's called Westfield.
Jamaica Avenue, Gertz
But back in the
Mall.
day,
There's a bunch of them here.
I mean, come on, man. We all know. I mean, like you go to the black mall, they're like 3-foot lockers. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just we know what the black mall
Stacked
is. We shouldn't have to explain that.
Yeah.
But like, thankfully, like you said, like thanks to the success of Alina Waithe and a Donald Glover, now I feel like they still may not be aware of a black mall, but like if you tell them no, this is a thing, they do trust you more.
I had the pleasure of watching the first episode of Atlanta, the original that y'all did.
Oh, Brothers in Atlanta.
Brothers in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it was starring Jaden Smith, right?
Jaden Smith.
Yep.
Us, Maya Rudolph.
August Alsina.
Pop Stop 3, yeah.
Yeah, Maya Rudolph. Why doesn't something like that get the green light?
Technically, it did get the green light. HBO was like, we're going to order this to series. And then after
by the way, when they order you to series, like you get this article in Deadline, like everybody in high school.
You tell your grandmother.
I'm so proud of you, man.
Yeah.
Like Atlanta's like, hey, we got a plaque ready for you. We got the plaque. It's getting made right now.
Let's go.
And then at
Chips
some
forever.
point, we got a call from the network, and they were like, hey, we've made a decision to not go forward with the show. We had actually completed all of season 1, so it's locked up in a box somewhere. Like, so that's a lot.
One of my better
memories. That's a lot of intellectual property.
Do y'all still own it though? Do y'all own it or do they own it?
No, they own it because they pay you for it, and then like we're not going to show it, which is actually the worst case.
One of my
scenario.
secret hopes actually is that one day they would just put it online and show people because you saw it. It's really funny.
Just bootleg it in the black mall.
Yeah, exactly.
Never see it in the black mall.
My barber used to have a dude. We used to call him Blackbuster because he used to come in there with all the movies.
He was black and a buster too.
So the reason the reason they told you that is because of the
truth of the matter is I won't speculate on the specifics because I don't know them. I'm not in those closed door meetings, but I will say those closed door meetings full of older white guys.
Yeah.
When the decisions are made, we're not in those meetings.
In defense of that network, that dude is now out of that job. So
But yeah,
was it Richard Prepler?
It was
we naming names.
It was Lombardo, Plepler. It was the whole team that was there toward the end.
They're not there anymore. It's all good.
Yeah, man. It was. I described that event as educational, but I will say that was a blessing because the show we're doing now is Southside.
Right. Tell us more about Southside.
Bring it back around. Bring it back around, Bashir.
So what was the process?
Positive, and we're gonna be humble.
Yeah, tell us about Southside a little bit now. Tell us about Southside.
And what was the process of getting this show picked up?
This show we only took it to one place. We were actually were looking around and we were like, who really lets people do stuff that this is gonna sound. There was a show on Comedy Central called Review. I don't know if anybody knows it. But it was this dude just reviewing things about life. It was so specific. And we were thinking to ourselves, if they let them do that, then they're really letting comedians just do what comedians want to do. And so we took it to them. This is the only network we went to. Yep. And we were like, look, it's the people from the South Side of Chicago. It's them as themselves and them as characters. It's them being real Chicagoans. And Comedy Central was on board. And, they were very constructive. And here we are today. So, and also all our family and friends are on it and our other series as well. And so, at the end of the day, I love the HBO show. I wish it could have happened, but I'm so happy they were doing this.
In a weird way, it was, we always say that, it kind of ended up being a good thing because, we went from, the pits of defeat, if you will, to, this man doing a lot of movies. Bashir's been in a lot of movies. Right. I ended up doing Marlon. Shout out to Marlon Wayans, who was hanging out with last night. Yeah. Bad move. In New York. That was crazy. He says hello. But, out of that defeat, we had the opportunity to do 2 shows. Yep. You know what I'm saying? And that means a lot to us. So,
why do y'all call it defeat though? It seems like that's just the process.
It was devastating. I mean,
it's one thing if you shoot a pilot and they say we're not going to do the show.
Yeah, that's whole
one
series.
thing. Right. It's the fact that they said yes, and then they're like, we're taking that yes back. All of it. Yeah, that's embarrassing.
They call your grandmother and be like, hey, exactly. Nana, so.
The good part is they don't put out another press release and deadline that says we've decided not to move forward.
They did.
Hold on. Yeah, they did.
Listen. When they said yes, there was a big picture of our I guess I got to say now, it was a big picture of Lauren Michaels because he was our producer
at the time,
and then it was a smaller picture of us, but we're like, cool. When the this is not going forward article, it was just a picture of us still smiling, these dudes. This series has been killed, so that was super embarrassing.
Now let's talk about the whole theme for Southside because you guys work from.
One of my boys worked. I'm sorry, Angela.
Oh, go ahead, rent to own. So let's talk about that. Have you ever rented furniture in real life?
Oh, by the way, there's no rent to own in New York.
Yes, they do.
Do they have Rent-A-Center in New York?
They definitely do.
No, Rent-A-Center. They just started a couple of years ago. But when I was a kid, there was no Rent-A-Center. When I went to school in the South, they were everywhere.
No, they have them in Brooklyn.
Look, it's for those of you who don't know, it's a business where you can rent.
Yes.
How do you return those?
Wait, rims?
Yeah, you can rent rims from Runner Spot.
Somebody's got to repo those rims too when they don't pay, don't they?
I'm sure.
Damn.
Well, that's a big part of our show is the fact that they do replevins. Yeah. They if you don't pay that $18 on the toaster this week, then they take it back. And it's a very dark practice because the interest rates that they charge really make we make the case in the show that there's nothing more expensive than being poor. Yeah. Right. You know what I mean? And and by the way, that's sort of we can take on heavy topics and sort of expose certain facts on our show because we're a comedy. Yeah. And I'll never forget one time I got into a lift. Because there are a lot of shows that take place in Chicago these days, but I got into the lift and he's like, hey man, I heard y'all doing a comedy about the South Side of Chicago. And I didn't know what the Brothers' agenda was, so I was a little bit nervous. I was like, yeah, we did. And he was like, thank you. Yeah. He was like, because there's more to this story, and that makes us really happy.
One of my boys worked at Rent-A-Center for years, 10 years. He actually is on Southside. Quincy, he's one of the twins. He actually plays the manager. And every time we'd be home for Thanksgiving, we would just be sitting around my mom's table. My mom's right over there. And we would just
Mama Bashir, how are
you? And we would just be, he'd be telling me hilarious stories about picking up stuff from people, dropping off stuff from people, and we were just like, this is a TV show. And the best part about it was because the job requires you to go all over the city of Chicago, we're like, the entire South Side is our play space. And so what we endeavored to do is actually, because we just love comedy and we love being funny and silly, turn the south side of Chicago into Springfield. Our first season has 150 speaking parts.
Well, Springfield being Springfield from The Simpsons.
So we just like, this person's going to say something. Any character you like that's funny is going to come back and say something else. You know, we're going to have our version of Clancy Wiggum and Principal Skinner and all those.
We would cast like somebody for like one line in the show, but if they made us laugh, like we bring them back for 3 or 4 episodes.
That's
you know
cool.
what I'm saying? Like,
we love funny people. And so when he told us that, he's in the show, his brother's in the show, my brother's in the show, and it's really Chicagoans. I always say it's Chicagoans telling you about ourselves. It's our voices. The writer room was all Chicago except for this guy and some other people. And then the people in front of the camera were all Chicago. And it was just like, it was beautiful. People, the extras on set, they'd be like, oh my God, we can't believe we get to do this. We
the
had
people
fun
who
today.
saw us filming, would like walk up out of nowhere and be like, oh man, you know, this scene would be funnier if you had this man say that. I was like, brother, that's great.
What's the union in Chicago? Is it like SAG or something?
Same thing as that. Like
That is the show. The show is watching all them people from Chicago walking to that SAG office. I bet you that is hilarious.
No, we're gonna be like NYPD, like, you know, like those shows that shoot in New York that every actor gets on at least once. Like we want to be that for Chicago.
Absolutely.
How often do people go to Rent a Center to rent things and then don't return them?
Very often. Like most of the time. I don't want to say that. But you know what I will say, though? I think the stereotype is that it's all black people. When we did a lot of research for this TV show. When we were doing research for the show, everybody was up in there. Black, white, rich guys. Like, not rich, but like white guys who have nice houses, who are overextended. Because, you know, a lot of people, despite how much they make per week, are still living above their means, still living check to check. I mean, in some ways, that's what the show is. It's a commentary about America. So many of us live above our means, live check to check. And in some ways, that, and also some of the things that we were born with, some of those challenges hold you back. And our show kind of explores that. What is it like to try to succeed? Because everybody on our show has a side hustle. Because in Chicago, everybody got a side hustle.
Let me ask you a question, man. It's going to sound stupid. So I rent something from Rent a Center, right?
Yes.
I have it for 6 months. I don't pay. They repo it.
Yes.
So now it's all fucked. Excuse my French, mama. It's all effed up, right? So they repo it. So what do they do with the repo stuff? Do they resell it to somebody
Absolutely.
else?
Same day.
Rent it right back
Really?
out?
It goes right back out. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's really
great business.
it's a predatory business. It's one in which you're
You
going
could
to
end
pay
up paying like
$3,000
for that
something
for that
that's
TV.
$100
You know what I'm
microwave.
saying?
It's crazy.
Like, for real.
Really?
Yeah, you pay like $18 a week, you know, and $2,500 over the life of the item, and it's like, man, that's just. But it's something that people who want to have stuff in their house, you know, it's one of those awful choices that, you know, people on the bottom have to make. And I think, again, we're not going to be preachy about it, but it's true and it's real and it actually happens. And so we're going to try to have fun with it because, you know, we have to turn these, you know.
We talk about the criminal justice system on the show. You know, the
It's
fact
Chicago.
is, like,
You have to.
Yeah.
You know, we have to, like.
You had to say it like that.
I play a public defender on the show.
I see,
You know what I'm
yep,
saying?
yep.
And, like, you know, many public defenders are underpaid and overworked. In my guy's situation, like, he's just really he's more concerned with getting to his tennis match in the afternoon, and so people are just going to jail left and right, you know, on his watch. You know, so like we again, we find ways to sneak in social commentary even though it's a comedy.
What does Chicago need to turn Chicago around? I'm actually going to be in Chicago this Sunday doing a real estate seminar, trying to teach people about owning because people are going to Chicago, buying up Chicago,
Absolutely.
pushing us out,
Yeah.
and then changing the rent and then charging us way higher for rent. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to
We have an
teach
episode
people
about that, too.
about real estate. So what does Chicago need to change it, to turn it around?
You know, my opinion about that is that I wish I knew that answer. I don't know it. I'm endeavoring to find it out. You know, I think one of the things, his father was a community activist. My father was an imam. I think both of us are going to be, you know, very deep in the community. We want to absolutely have a presence there. I think it's important for us as we have fun and have joy with people that we also make sure we have an eye toward our responsibilities there to the people there. So that's something that's going to be increasing. What I've seen as I've begun, though, is just a lot of hungry people. I think hungry people are going to find a way to eat. I also think that in terms of some of the violence that you see in Chicago, I think there was some older structures in place, some OGs who kind of kept things specific. I think a lot of that leadership has been wiped out or put in jail or made inert. I think there's so many other different factors, you know, and it's just, the question is, for me at least, is like, how do I even find the right questions to ask to start making a difference? And there are great groups in Chicago, like the Interrupters, those guys who really just try to stop, you know, violence from happening. There are pastors, there are community activists. There's so many people working hard. We don't ever see these people. They don't really make the news because when they're successful, you don't hear anything.
Right.
You only hear when they're not successful.
By the way, we have a joke about that too, because in the show, anytime, like, it can be a very positive episode, but anytime like the smallest negative thing happens in the show,
Yes,
like a
right.
fight breaks out, like on the news, it's like tragedy on the South Side as a fight breaks out, and like, you know, like the news only shows you the bad
Right.
stuff. So there you
I
go.
just want to say, you know, I know everybody heard what Bashir said, and he was like, that was so eloquent. And he was like, how does this nigga from Chicago that's a comedian talk like this? He graduated from Harvard.
Who said that about me? You know who said that? Charlamagne said that. He's He's been calling me a nigger all morning.
Charlamagne has been looking at you, and now he wants to project it on
People
the
look at you, they go, "Who's this nigga in this, teal shirt?"
Let's hope it was
Saying
Charlamagne
shit,
and not Seth
dumbass
Moulton.
nigga, a little heavy.
But he did
Oh, yeah, you
graduate
guys
from
all
Harvard.
was all that
shit.
Bashir did graduate from Harvard, though.
We met at Harvard,
We met at
actually.
Harvard.
We
Yo,
were-
watching my mouth, not trying to curse in front of mama. He just go crazy over there.
Mama from
Look,
Chicago.
my mother's from the west side
Exactly.
of Chicago. God bless her. She's from the
She's
west
heard
side.
all
All I
these
gotta
words
say.
before,
So y'all met at Harvard.
Yeah,
Amazing.
We were an acapella group.
Yeah. Right, we were. It was
were.
called Brothers.
Brothers.
Can you see if you can figure out what race they were?
What?
It was like 5%.
Brothers.
It was like
Acapella group
5% of the
called
Harvard
Brothers.
population of
Exactly.
black people, and we were all singing.
Trying to sound like Joe.
Harvard was not.
Yeah.
Harvard must not have no basketball team or football team. If that's how.
Oh, Harvard
They
has
got a
more
basketball
sports
team?
teams. Harvard has more sports teams than any
Were
other
there
school.
any black guys on our basketball team?
Was it Jeremy Lin on
Yes,
that
there were
team?
tons of black people on
on our
yeah.
basketball team?
Yes, there was
Come
like
on,
four.
man.
So you guys are really.
Carlin played. No, he did track and field.
I don't know. I'm telling you, I went to one game. There's definitely
went to
African
one
Americans.
Yeah,
So you
but
guys
now,
really
Bashir,
were in an
I-
a cappella group together?
Yeah, we were an
Brothers, yeah.
acapella group,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
we were trying to be like Jodeci sounding.
That was
Going
like an
down.
DJ.
episode of Key and Peele.
I did DJ.
He was a DJ and the singing in the group?
Yeah, I
here's
was a
the deal.
DJ in college.
I lost my job at the Harvard Law Library because I fell asleep one day, and I was like, I still got to make some money somewhere.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Well, can I say when
I
Diallo,
felt terrible. I was like, I'm bringing down the race. Like I finally got a job.
God damn.
And then I fell
Diallo.
asleep.
at Harvard
Come
too, by
on,
the
you
way.
know, Exactly.
At some point, they saw me sleeping, and they were like, "See, we
That's
gave him
why.
a chance.
Give him a chance.
Lazy ass.
This is what happens."
He's
Can I-
no
yo,
Obama.
Let me. Can I give Diallo credit though? When we first went to college, like the ascension of Southern music was sort of beginning. Diallo brought all this music from Atlanta, and we went to school in the East Coast. And the East Coast, I would almost say it's like a bully a little bit. Like when I went to college, if you didn't listen to hip hop from New York, everybody clowned you. Nobody wanted to hear Crucial Conflict, and nobody wanted to hear. So Diallo was like, "Yo, you got to hear this song. It's Atlanta. This is like all this stuff." And niggas like, "Man,
98.
get that bullshit out of here, nigga. The fuck you talking about, nigga?" And he was persistent.
They said
I
that
was
at
like,
Harvard.
"Why are you saying?"
I'm
this?
telling you, Harvard is
white.
dominated by the East Coast. It's like New York City dominates at that
But
time
we had a
specifically
radio show,
dominated the entire. East Coast.
like so I
Yeah.
DJ'd to like make my living
Yeah.
back then, so like I would get like $300 a gig, which is like huge amount of money when you're in college, and I also did Harvard radio, and I
It
would
was
bring this
listened to,
dude,
yeah,
I would bring this dude on,
we do
and I would
sketches.
just make up stuff like because nobody was listening. I had like the 2 to 6
Yeah.
slot, 2
in the
a.m.
morning to 6?
Yeah, it was only prisoners from
it
like-
was only Bill and Rick at prison.
Yeah.
That was the only place that
It
was
was
listening
man,
to
this
us.
is
So I'd
Joe
be
from
like,
Cell
shout
Block.
out to Eric E Block,
Yeah.
shout out to Eric, and then I'd bring him on. I'd be like, oh, so we got a new dancehall artist. This is Blue Now Crocodile Ranks,
Wagwan.
and we did that all day.
And then we leave, and then
And that was the beginning of our
and then,
comedy.
Jamaican kids would be like, "I'm gonna beat your ass." We don't sound like that.
Hey
like,
man,
you
who's that
sound like
man with
that.
the fake patois? I'm
Hey, you got jokes, huh?
like, "Don't
What
diss
years was
Crocodile."
this?
Graduated 1998.
So that was like what 9 so what was popping in Atlanta then? That was like the
It was Goody Mob,
What's
Goody
Up?
Mob,
High School.
Outkast,
Yep.
the Dungeon
Outkast.
Family era. Yeah,
You went to high
yeah.
school with them cats.
Yeah, like CeeLo and Big Gip and Cujo and all them dudes. Those were
Diallo was
my
actually a
homies.
gopher at Paramount. You didn't you
Yeah,
run
when
into-
my first job out of college, I was working at Paramount, and they were on an episode of some show, and I'm just walking carrying coffee, and I hear, "Hey, Diallo!" and I look over, and it's the entire Goody Mob on like one of those little golf carts you drive around the lot, and he's like, "Hey, that man was the valedictorian!"
Wow. And you were like,
And I'm carrying coffee, like, "Hey, fellas."
there were a lot of moments like that. I remember I was a waiter for many years, and I ran into one of my, I won't say, just somebody I knew from college. He was a doctor at that time. He was taking his whole family out for dinner. He was just chips and dips, and I was like, "Hey guys, who want to get some apps?" Oh, made eye contact with him. He was like, "Ew."
I got one worse. I was working at
Awkward.
Banana Republic just to supplement my
How many
Paramount
jobs
money.
did you have, David? Go ahead.
Entertainment industry. Everyone
Yeah,
takes.
you know. And by the
every
way,
odd
when you
job
go
it
to
takes.
Harvard,
Yeah.
like everybody who you grew up with thinks like, "Oh, you gonna make $1 million?"
Absolutely.
And so like I'm
gonna be rich.
22, and they're like, "Hey, you made that $1 million yet?" I'm like, "Well, actually, I'm out in Hollywood and I'm trying to make my way." They're like, "Come on, man." You ain't made that $1 million yet? Like you feel like you've let down the entire community.
Because we come from blue collar families. You know, we actually didn't know.
I'm one of
for-
6. He's one of 8.
I'm one of 8. We didn't know that if you go to Harvard, you write for the Harvard Lampoon, you can get a job right now. Nobody told us that stuff.
No.
We didn't know any of that stuff. They didn't tell us nothing. And so we got out there and our family's like, "Oh, good, we finally got somebody at the Ivy League school." And we were like, "Hey, we're gonna go into entertainment." And they were like, fuck.
What made y'all want to go to Ivy League schools as opposed to HBCUs?
Man, I would have gone. I always say this. I would have gone to Morehouse, but I grew up in Atlanta. I had to get away from the family.
Gotcha.
Like you don't want to go to school. I never understand people who go to college in the town they grew up in. You know what I mean? Like that's the whole point. So
It could be a financial thing too, though, because you get to stay home and not have to live on campus.
Absolutely. But I wanted that away from my parents' experience. So yeah, I was just like, well, what's the other Morehouse? And that's not in second grade. My teacher asked, "Where are you going to go to college?" And which is a weird thing to ask a second grader, admittedly.
But it's good to put that.
Good
in
to put the
early.
seeds in
But I
early.
was like, "What's the best college?" And she said Harvard, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to go there." And then after that point, I like legitimately worked my hardest to always make good grades and go there. So that's dope. There you go.
Did you develop a strong love for white women at Harvard? Either one of y'all?
I didn't date one white woman at Harvard.
Y'all's girlfriend was Ethiopian.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, none but jokes. And she did not like any of those jokes.
I did make a lot of Ethiopian,
Terrible
but
jokes.
Really?
I still love that culture. You know what I'm saying?
Don't try to clean it up now.
But I still love
We
the
got
culture.
enemies, yo. We got enemies. I got Jamaican enemies. He got Ethiopian enemies.
No, I don't have any enemies.
Well, give us an
So since
example
I've
of one
been
of your
here, We have
jokes.
beef with Donald Glover,
Give us-
country of Ethiopia. Like this
You
is
said
this
fuck
is a
NBC
lot.
for canceling Marlon. I heard you.
Give us an
I did
example
not say
of
that,
one
but
of
you
your
know what?
Ethiopian jokes. We
Shout
want
out
to
to
hear.
Marlon.
Oh,
Wait,
Angela
what?
asked you to
We
do
want to
one
hear
of
one
your
of your
jokes.
Ethiopian jokes.
let's hear one.
I'm not telling the Ethiopian. Come on, here.
Not in this climate.
Hell damn no. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm gonna pay for that too. But you know,
Actually, I really love. I truly do love the Ethiopian culture. I'm serious.
Some of your best
Say
friends.
nothing here, man. That's ridiculous.
Some of your best friends are Ethiopian.
Some of my best friends are Ethiopian.
No, I'm not saying some of my best friends.
The
are
old-
no,
Ethiopian.
my wife's best friend is Ethiopian.
Shout out to
So-
Peachy.
Shout out,
Peachy.
Mebs.
Your old girlfriend gonna pop up as he was so verbally abusive with his Ethiopian jokes.
Uh-oh.
She's gonna unblock me on Facebook.
Finally.
I just want to find out what you've been up to.
I mean, we didn't really study in college. This is what we did. We just try to make
This is all
jokes,
we did.
try to make the lunch table laugh. When you come from a big family, you got to be loud,
Absolutely.
to be heard, to get fed.
We were hanging out. We were hanging out with our friends from Harvard last night, and I was looking at this table full of still relatively young black men. They're all well suited. I was like, y'all are so rich.
Yeah.
Y'all are so rich. Like they all went into finance. I'm like,
Yeah.
why in the world did we go into storytelling for a living?
Yeah, a
Like,
lot
this is
of
ridiculous.
Wall Street hedge fund type guys who just have just caking it.
God bless
Well,
them.
listen, y'all Emmy nominated.
Yeah.
You
That's
know
right,
what I mean? Wrote for Fallon.
That's right,
Come
that's
on
right,
now.
that's
I know y'all in here being humble,
Stop,
but
that's enough. That's she didn't clap. He was like, all right.
I figure
She over here on her phone. She's like,
What's up, Instagram? What you doing right now? Fucking nothing.
We're gonna have $5 in an hour. I'll wake up for that.
Hey, what time you here?
But you guys could always
time
raise
coming?
money from your friends from Harvard. You guys could always raise money and get investors too.
You know,
You won't be that guy.
yeah. You know
By the way, we already did that. we made a short. When we wrote for Fallon, we made a short film with Black Thought. Actually, I told him about it last night. It was called All Access because New York still has a thriving public access TV network, and Diallo's brother used to run it, and so we made a short film about it.
Some of the
Black
best
Thought.
content
Shout
you
out
can
Black
ever
Thought.
see.
Shout out Roots.
Yeah.
Public access New
Shout out
York
to my brother
television
Tony
is
at
amazing.
Brick. Now he does it in Brooklyn. So,
I haven't seen a good one in a while, but back in the day, the public access shows used to be
so
great
good.
in New York.
Remember that preacher, the one that went viral? With
Which one?
He had his whole head was shaved.
He was from New York?
And then he had a
Yeah. I didn't know he was from New York.
He said, "It's the gospel, bitch." You don't remember that guy?
Yeah, I do remember him. I didn't know he was from New York.
I think he's from New York, man.
I don't think he was.
Yeah, I don't think he's from New York.
I don't think
He
he's
felt
from
New York.
I know you're talking about.
He was very scary.
But he had a green screen. He would often project images of New York behind him. Maybe
He was holding like a phone book. Remember that? All right, well,
Pharrell's a big fan of.
huge fan.
Yeah, he is.
And when does the South Side come on for everybody out there?
July 24th,
Yeah.
10:30, Comedy Central.
Right between South Park and The Daily Show, so it's
Yeah.
really easy to remember. It's Wednesday nights.
Good placement.
They
That
put
is
us between
great.
the two
No, they
best
gave
shows.
us the shout out to Comedy Central, man, because like they bought it in the room.
Yep.
They bought the idea in the room.
Yep.
And then we did a pilot, and they bought the pilot, and they said they were going to do the series, and they did the series. So shout out to anybody who keeps a promise.
And let me just give one quick
great.
also shout out to my wife because she was the one who actually suggested that instead of just turning in a pilot script, because I think if you read, for example, and this is for people who
Yeah,
are
that's true.
young show creators, just to give them a little bit of something. When somebody reads your script, they don't know your voice. Like if I give you something and I go, this is for Eddie Murphy, when you read it, you hear Eddie. But if I give you something and it's for me, you don't know who the fuck I am. You don't know what I sound like, so you can't do it. So my wife was like, y'all should make a little sizzle reel. We went to the south side of Chicago with our
sizzle
director,
reel
Michael
being like a
Blyden.
10-minute
10-minute presentation
of what you want to
We
do.
went all around the city of Chicago. We shot it. We turned it into the network, and they were like, we get it. So thank you, Chandra.
You just got married too, right? Like last year?
Year and a half. I've been married. Yep.
How's it changed you?
You know, I actually, it's damn, I did not know we were going to talk about this. My brain was like, be careful, nigga. So I would just say that I married somebody who my thinking was, I want this to feel like it's the way I want it and it's perfect and for both of us. And then once it feels like that, let's just get married because it won't change anything. So we did a lot of work before we got married. I think the change that I had to make in myself happened before we got married, and the work continues. And I think once I felt like we were in a good place with that, then we got married. So it didn't really – the change actually happened beforehand, because it's not until you actually fall in love with somebody that you discover all the fucked up shit about yourself. Because before that, I had just not known. I was living in New York. I should stop talking about this.
You were
right
starting.
now. This is terrible.
It's okay.
I was living in New York.
Black men don't cheat.
Now.
Exactly. I was living in New York. I was having fun. And then you meet somebody you actually care about. And then once you're committed to somebody, then you realize that there are things you have to change in order to be in this relationship.
That's right.
Because if you just fleet and moving around, you ain't got to change shit. As soon as somebody fuck up, you're like, all right, bye. Right. But when you got to stick around, then you got to do some work.
How long did you guys date before you got married?
We were together for about 6-7 years, actually.
There you go.
We were there for a while. You know, we just traveled the world together.
6-7 years?
6 or 7 years.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
What you waiting on, Diallo, to stop thoughting?
I've been married for almost
3
11
kids.
years.
Congratulations.
You got 3 kids. What are you talking about?
Charlamagne was like, nah, I ain't going to do this research.
looked up and
I have 3 boys.
I'm going to stick you for Marlon for a second. I'm sorry. You're fine.
What's up, Marlon? Sorry about that shot. Damn.
We've been married almost 11 years. We got 3 kids.
But doesn't it make your life better when it's just a nice, stable family?
I don't remember being single anymore.
It's been 11 years.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
So, you know. And honestly, once you have kids, I feel like
I got to write that line down.
Thing.
I don't remember being single anymore. I'm going to use that one later.
Being single anymore.
He said, me neither. Charlamagne, me neither. Let me write that down, though.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
It is.
He's going to use that in the next
I mean, it's
argument.
real, but it's a good one.
It's true.
I got to tell you, I thought the show was called The Breakfast Club. I thought y'all was kidding about that breakfast part. It's early as hell right now.
And there's no food.
No.
We got you water, though.
Thank you very much. I'm so impressed with the people who just, so much energy. And
I love
that.
I love seeing all these black people up at this hour.
Everybody's so excited in the morning.
Oh, you thought we taped these later on in the day?
I'm thinking it was like an afternoon show and then
Hell no.
Well, Charlamagne is late. The show's supposed to start at 6.
He's late every day.
Every day he comes in at 6:02. Like, nah, the show's supposed to start at 6:02 now.
I keep trying to tell y'all my contract says 6:05. y'all keep thinking it's a joke for whatever reason, but okay.
Well, Bashir and Diallo, we appreciate
Thank you for
guys
having us,
so much, man. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Seriously.
It's the Breakfast
and anytime
Club.
y'all got projects, man, pull up. I mean, I don't know how often y'all be in New York, but
Oh, we'll come through every time.
Yeah, pull up.
yeah.
We'll be here too much. Y'all will be like, oh, okay, guys.
Nah, come on up.
Marlon is here every 75 days.
He is.
That is a fact.
He is. Well,
Thanks
it's
for
the
having us,
Breakfast
guys.
Club. Good morning.